All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to talk about Helldivers 2. Now, we have to talk about Helldivers because I find it that it's very interesting that Kotaku is doing this particular article, and I think it comes from a place of disingenuous nature, and that's not too shocking, I'm sure, to people who know about Kotaku, but I just find it interesting because now they're trying to say that after losing the battle, right, because they lost the battle about, oh, you should just sign up for BSN, it's easy, gamers are just whiners, blah, blah, blah. After losing that battle, now they're trying to shift the narrative and try to make it seem that Helldivers 2 is essentially a dying game.
You are coping and seething. You just can't accept what you're seeing.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have an article here with a headline that reads, Helldivers 2 is facing a numbers problem. The last few weeks of drama have really hurt the game's community. Now, again, they're trying to make it seem as if the drama around the game hurt the game in the long run. And I gotta be honest with you, ladies and gentlemen, I don't think that's true in the slightest. I think it might have hurt its image, but in terms of its community that is there, that was fighting for the game in the first place, I don't think that it actually hurt the community at all. I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to take a normal fall off from a live service game and trying to pass it off as, oh, look, gamers are not sticking to what they said they were going to play anyway. Why give them what they wanted? Look, everybody's leaving. So let's get into this article, guys, from Kotaku. But of course, before we do, if you are new here, just consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it, and like the video to push us out into that YouTube algorithm. It says Helldivers 2 is crashing back down to earth after a meteoric ascent, which is true. It did have a crazy, ridiculous ascent, but that's because word of mouth is stronger than anything, mind you. And a lengthy tenure at the very top of the live service market, Arrowhead Game Studios' player count for its cooperative third-person shooter has been in an extended freefall the last several weeks. Now player counts are trending downward, and Helldivers 2 needs to figure out a way forward. Helldivers 2 Galactic War Story, the meta-narrative that enthralled its players in the first place and allowed them to roleplay as comically evil fascists, have descended upon its massive fandom to come through and complete mandates, such as the termination of billions of bugs at once, etc., etc. The stratagems that were promised to the community upon their completion have been appropriately withheld, upsetting the dwindling player base, which is sitting at a respectable place of about 66,000 players currently. However, according to Eurogamer, this number represents a nearly 65% drop from the month before it. Okay, so now that we know where the numbers stand, let's talk about the narrative being built around it, okay? So they're trying to make it seem as if the drama that happened with the whole PSN requirement linking and all that stuff is what is killing the game. That is not true in the slightest. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't care how good of a live service game you have, unless it's an MMORPG, you are going to experience a massive drop-off. Helldivers 2 does not have anywhere close to the content, world building, or longevity of an MMORPG. It is no different from any other live service game. Is it fun? Yes, absolutely. Is it something you could play with your friends very easily? Yes, absolutely. But at the end of the day, it is just a live service game, and that's all it will ever be. So those kind of games notoriously experience massive drop-offs after the first month. When the honeymoon phase is over, that's all it takes for it to experience a crazy drop-off. Usually it's 50%, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, but at the end of the day, it's going to get to its static number one way or another. All we're seeing here with Helldivers is that it's going to lose its player base. That is not going to be its static player base. Eventually, it's going to stagnate at a certain number, and that's going to be its final player base no matter what. It says, of course, that number is trending downward for a number of reasons. Live service games tend to have a heavy drop-off, and after honeymoon period, and Helldivers 2 enjoyed a lengthier one at most. So again, I'm glad that they're at least admitting that there is in fact a honeymoon period when it comes to live service games. And I will admit that Helldivers 2 did have a longer one than usual, and the reason why is because the word of mouth was so unbelievably strong for this video game that people were streaming it everywhere. I knew everybody that I personally know of was constantly playing Helldivers. It was ridiculous. I was getting invited to multiple different Helldivers game every single day. It's insane. So that word of mouth really carried the game through and led to its success. But now it's starting to realize that, hey, people get bored, right? At the end of the day, you are just teaming up with 3 other shooters and you're shooting a certain, whatever, bugs, robots, it doesn't matter, but you're still doing the same exact thing. You might do it in a different area, you might do it with a different look or a different enemy, but it's still ultimately a PvE game, right? Like PvP games really carry through with live service games, and this game just doesn't have that. It's a PvE only game, so it needs to really diversify its content and push it out there quickly at a high quality in order to maintain a player base for a super long period of time. It had its drama, it had its push in the public eye, and now it's time to get down and dirty and really see what you got to do to keep this game going. Then it says, however, it all eventually gave way to frustration as players felt that the game's balance seemed to shift chaotically and accrued a number of bugs along the way. Now, that is true. There was a lot of patches that people disagreed with what they did with the guns and some of the stratagems, and it really pissed a lot of players off. And after a while, that turned them off and made them leave. So that is true. Now the dust continues to settle after a PSN login requirement was walked back after a thoroughly damaging weekend, and the picture ain't too pretty. It's clear that Helldivers 2 is bumping up against an ugly numbers problem. On one hand, its narrative and goals require that sometimes comically large numbers be hit in order to make progress. The game creates incredible story beats because it's been able to throw hundreds of thousands of players working in unison at fabricated problems, which has helped propagate word about the game. On the other hand, there was once an engaged player community that was more than happy to mobilize and try to meet the ludicrous demands, in part because role-playing the whole affair made it a fun thing to do with other players. Now, though, the recent kick-up, as well as several other unfortunate missteps, have soured a good deal of what's left in the community. Now, again, ladies and gentlemen, I want to make it very clear. I think Helldivers 2 still has a fantastic community. I think it has a very active community and a very dedicated one. I think that if they do put out certain content that's going to be bolstered around trying to maintain who they have, I don't think they're going to lose very much more. I think Helldivers is probably going to stagnate at around 50,000 players a day. I would imagine that that's probably going to be the number. And at the end of the day, listen, Suicide Squad had 300, okay? Like, that's fucking Suicide Squad, which cost $200 million, okay? Has 300 players on Steam. Helldivers 2 stagnating at 50,000. Yeah, that's more than enough players for them to profit off of. And that's daily count. Don't forget, there's ups and there's downs, but if you're going to average out at about 50,000, I think that is way more than enough for you to make some good money in the long term and really have an overall successful game that people are going to play in the long term. So I think they need to focus on building back the community. They need to focus on getting the word of mouth back out there. They need to focus on getting on the good side and the good graces of a lot of people who they might have pissed off with certain patches. They got to figure it out. It's time to get to work, and all this farming of the drama and basically trying to look like the good guys since you reverted the PSN decision. Yeah, it's about time to get down to work and forget all that, because that's not going to carry you through all the way to the end. So we'll find out what happens. For me anyway, I'm not really playing Helldivers 2 anymore. I kind of gave up after the whole debacle because that really put like a sour taste in my mouth with Sony. But I know of a lot of players that are still playing it, and I hope they continue to enjoy it. And hopefully this company, Arrowhead Studios, realizes what they have before they completely nuke it and end up like Suicide Squad. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.